Welcome to the first episode of the AI Literacy Movement podcast. I'm Alan Fortune. I'm a psychology instructor here at Lemoore College. And I've spent the last 2 years working with educators and students and administrators, helping them understand how education is changing and AI integration is not only inevitable, but needed. And this podcast is here to help you understand or, become more literate with AI terms and how things are used. And so we're going to have some people on here to help them learn how to enhance critical thinking, engagement, and learning outcomes. So, and also what's the role within education, both inside and outside the classrooms. We'll talk to students, faculty, administrators, industry professionals that use it every day. And our goal is to bridge the gap between fear, understanding when it comes to AI and learning. So today, kicking off our series of discussion on how AI is already shaping the classroom experience and different perspectives on its use. They're joining me 3 fantastic guests, 2 students of mine, Sadie and Sydney, as well as a co-worker, colleague, Austin Minter, our poli-sci instructor here at Lemoore College. So let's jump in. I guess the first thing we're talking about is what is AI. So I think I started doing this a couple of years ago, and Sadie and Sydney were actually in that first class that I had as I came back in August 2023, where I started implementing AI or started talking about AI in the classroom. And so I thought it would be interesting to have them in the classroom. So, in the podcast, to be able to talk about not only how it started and what were their thoughts when when this crazy instructor came into the class and said, hey, we're going to use AI today. And a lot of people didn't even know what I was talking about, didn't know what ChatGPT was or any of those things. And that's kind of where we started. So I guess for both of you, you guys can, kind of join in and with what, when you heard about AI initially, what were your thoughts? I mean, I know, Sadie and I have been doing the tour of what is AI and helping people to understand that. So I think, maybe Sydney, like when you heard about AI in the classroom, what was your thoughts and how did you initially, use it or want to use it?
Starting out when I was in high school and it first started coming out and being a public thing, it kind of felt almost illegal to talk about AI
Yeah.
and want to use it in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And then I had that class with you and it taught me and helped me to understand that AI is not just something you can use to help you cheat on your homework, because it doesn't even help you do that. It helps you expand on your ideas and gives you a broader insight and aspect to the concepts, and honestly is really helpful for understanding topics.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, students can actually use it to cheat. I mean, let's be honest.
They definitely can.
And most students, given just with if they were going to just do it themselves, I mean, they probably would use it to cheat. But I mean, why would my question is, why are students cheating? When I heard about this, I mean, the biggest thing for me was I wanted to learn what it was so I could help understand and maybe create things so that students wouldn't cheat.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So that was my whole goal, is how do I create assignments or how do I create assessments so that students are going to have a harder time cheating? And that's kind of, I think, I don't know, Austin, maybe you could talk about this, but I think, faculty members or instructors, that's kind of their first go-to is how do I police this? Mm-hmm. How do I, stop people from using this because I don't have my arms wrapped around it or it fits outside of what they're doing. I mean, is that kind of because when we were doing the hybrid academy and stuff, and there was AI in there, and I know that you've used it to help build things and create things. I mean, is that when you talk to colleagues and when you talk to people, is that kind of the sentiment, or where were you when you started hearing about AI use?
I think that I was in my master's program actually whenever AI was in its infancy. But when it comes to students using it in the classroom, you had asked a question earlier about kind of where it originated and why students would cheat.
Yeah.
I think students probably use it to cheat in those situations because they don't understand exactly what's happening. And so therefore it kind of just gives them the answer and they don't have to worry about doing the work.
Do you think it's that too? Or maybe time? Because I think time I don't know, you guys might be able to chime in too, but.
Yeah, so I always equate it to stats. Stats, if you've ever taken a stats course, one question can be an entire page. And if you mess up one part in it, you have to start over.
Yeah.
That's similar to writing a paper, right? If you're going to write a paper, if you start out bad or if you start out with the wrong thesis and then you get to the end and you're like, wait, I disagree with everything I've just written, similar process. But if you don't even know what's happening in the writing, or if you don't even know what's happening in the stats problem, and you get the wrong answer, it makes it very difficult to understand. And so when you're using AI, you're kind of bridging that gap between the hard work that's required and the outcome. And so it's much easier to go into a spreadsheet and just put in some data and get some answers.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, if you don't know what mean is, for example, in a set of data and what
Sure.
that means, you're just getting an answer and putting it on a paper, so you're not learning anything. So I think in an application in the classroom, students should know how to write and what writing is, and then they should definitely implement the use of AI.
Yeah, I mean, but you guys know how to write, right? As students, I mean, you guys know how to write,
No,
and so
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when we're really kind of talking about like higher education. So I think how did AI change the way you guys, once it was introduced? So you guys, hear about it in this class, and I introduce it, and I take off the the horns and the pitchfork off of it, and I say, hey, look, this could actually be something that you could use. I mean, what was the aha moment where you were like, maybe this would actually help me, and I don't have to use it necessarily to cheat, but I can use it to be better at what I'm trying to do?
I think for like most of my assignments, especially like writing assignments, it changed the way I start the assignment, but nothing more than that. Say you give us a research paper, typically you would give us a topic or we have to create our own topic. Well, a lot of students struggle with that creativity to create their own topic, so you could go to AI, start with that topic, ask, like, this is kind of what I talk about, give me a main topic for it. Get that main topic, and then if it's a research paper, you're going to have to go back to Google or anywhere and search many different websites to get the information from that. Whereas if you use AI like ChatGPT, Perplexity, or NotebookLM, it gives you sources to automatically go off of that are directed straight to what that is, and all of them are scholarly topics.
But let's break that down a little bit, because I think you just said 3. Like, and at the
Yeah,
beginning,
well,
we
there's
didn't
a
have
lot,
we
but-
didn't have those 3 that even in my classes that we
Yeah.
use a lot, right? So ChatGPT is OpenAI's model, right? And it was the OG of AI, right? So that was the first thing when we got into classes. It was like, hey, have you heard of ChatGPT? Let's open it up and let's play. Get some things in there, see what it can do. And so that was kind of the starting thing. And ChatGPT's now evolved, and you have. Not only that, you have Microsoft's version of their LLM called Copilot, and you have Gemini's, which is Google's LLM, and then we had Claude, which is Anthropic's, which Google has invested in. So there's so many of them. I think for me, I really wanted to again use as many of those as possible so that I know what the strengths are. And in classes, so you said, ChatGPT. Well, we know, I mean, one of the things, I don't know, Austin, again, you probably can chime in, but one of the things I hear from faculty, or I hear from people when I meet with them, is like, hey, ChatGPT is going to hallucinate and it's going to give you some bad information. And that's true. And I think, to your point, Austin, if you don't know what you're looking at, you wouldn't know if it's bad information or not. But there's also some things that other LLMs do better. And I think Perplexity is one that's really evolved into this really research or research LLM that helps students get the sources, see the sources. Gemini does a good job of it as well. But in our classes, we use Perplexity to do that. How has adding Perplexity to what you guys are looking at, especially as students doing research a lot for a lot of classes, what is maybe something that you use Perplexity for?
We recently had a research paper, and Perplexity was probably my biggest helper in coming up with not only how to dial in and like specifically choose my research question with the questions that I was presenting to it. It gave me like research papers or like topics, studies, and I was able to go in and look at those. I had to fact check a lot of it just to make sure that it wasn't too crazy, which is something you should be doing when you're with AI, which is what I think is the easiest way to be like, hey, that's a cheater. But it was incredibly helpful with giving me previous studies and research papers to go back and look at, and then I could expand on that.
I think one of the things that students make, one of the errors that they make, is that they cite ChatGPT as a resource. They have like, they're talking and then they're like, hey, you need to have citations. And they're like, well, I use ChatGPT. And they say, well, I use ChatGPT, and that's the resource, because they gave them, just like if they were Googling, right, they would say, hey, this is the resource that I got. It was ChatGPT. I mean, in our classes, we talk a lot about, ChatGPT uses resources, right? So being able to find out that the information that you're getting, you should be providing the resources for ChatGPT to be including in what you're creating. And then citing those resources, because just as if you were writing it, you wouldn't cite yourself, right? You have citations you have sources that you need to be able to pull from. And so using something like Perplexity or Gemini, you're actually getting those sources, and you're able to then use those sources when you're using ChatGPT to help you write those things. I think maybe that's another reason we did. What was the other one you said? You said Perplexity, and then what? Oh,
NotebookLM.
So NotebookLM is Google. It's Google Notebook. It's actually been around for a long time, but Google Notebook allows you to add a bunch of sources and resources and then communicate or chat with those. So if you add a bunch of those sources like you guys did, like we did in our class, we create this. Austin, this is a good one too for history too. But if we have a research paper, we had our students add all of their sources into NotebookLM. So they had them all the websites, right? And then they could talk to a chatbot and saying, hey, what are some trends between these two? How, if you're writing something and you're like, I need to find a source that will help me justify this statement because I've read it somewhere, but I don't remember where, right? It'll say, oh, it was found here in this thing, or the statement was found in this source, or whatever, or it's a combination of these two. So it allowed them to help pull those things into their research paper. Again, they would still have to cite it or whatever, but it allows them to talk in that project where they have all that sources of information. And the other thing is it creates podcasts, which is kind of cool. It can do a deep dive.
That's actually a feature of the NotebookLM that I use, is I upload all of the required module readings and resources that I normally would give them, and I upload them in there, and I spit out the podcasts, and I tell them to listen to the podcast before they take the quiz. And once I implemented that process, their quiz grades went up.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And it's called a deep dive. For those of you guys who don't know, you guys go into NotebookLM, and then you put in the sources, and then on the right-hand side, there's a thing that says create a deep dive, and it's actually two AI voices that will create something that sounds like a podcast. It's them discussing it, which is cool. It's not actually them reading it; it's them discussing it, kind of like we're doing today. But let me ask you this. I mean, Austin, since you're here as an educator, what is the dilemma that educators are maybe finding? So we have ChatGPT, and I'm saying in AI literacy that we need to be able to educate and teach people how to use the tool properly. There's a statistic that just came out, and I'll try to put it in the notes here, but that 76% of faculty members and instructors believe that the use of AI is still plagiarism. Like, what is that? Maybe what excites you about AI in education, and what maybe concerns you the most?
Well, there's a lot on both sides. I think that I'm a faculty member whom wants to be on the cutting edge of whatever the technology may be. I typically am a first adopter of most technologies. But there is some hesitation, given that my background comes from government and a little bit of economics. And so I do fear when a lot of these jobs get replaced. That's my concern. But when it comes to application in the classroom, I think those faculty members that are scared that it's going to be plagiarism or that they're just going to cheat are the same faculty members who probably don't adopt technology very easily. And oftentimes it's those faculty members who have been doing the same thing the same way for many, many years. And there's nothing wrong, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, the education system is changing, right? Now we sit in groups and we used to sit in rows. So there are certain things that change throughout.
The reality is that we used to sit in groups, and then we sat in rows, and now we're sitting back in groups. I mean, the educational system is broken in America. We are not the leaders of education.
Oh, no.
So at the end of the day, what we used to do, we don't do. We spend more time in the classroom. I mean, you could talk to our parents. You spend more time in the classroom. We are supposed to be. You look at students today, and they are trying to be, they just want to learn through osmosis, like be in the room and they can learn, right? The reality is that it's changing, and I get what you're saying. Policy. I think we should have guardrails. I think that there should be some guidelines. There should be policies that are put in place. But
it's just hard that a government that historically hasn't been able to regulate anything like social media, right?
Sure.
And now we're going to expect them to regulate AI. A lot of the members of Congress don't even know how to operate.
No, exactly.
Basic
I remember
computer.
The Congress when Facebook was under investigation, and Congress was asking them questions, and it just showed how out of touch they were because of the questions that they. I agree, and I would say that faculty are. I could say also that when I talk to faculty, I feel like they have some similar questions as well. They're saying stuff because they don't know, right? They've never used it.
I think there's like three groups. There may be more since you're more of an expert on this, but I feel like there are three groups. There are faculty whom don't want to use it, will never likely use it. There are faculty who are using it without actually knowing. It's almost like a Trojan horse effect. And then there are faculty that will use it no matter what,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're just like, oh, let's use it. It's a new tool. Let's use it. I would say that I'm in the middle, right?
Okay.
Where I do feel
Middle
like
of 1 and 2 or 3 and 2? Or
in the
what?
middle of 1 and 3.
Okay.
I think, like I said, it is a good tool, and I'm going to utilize it and learn how to use it, because if I don't learn how to use it, I don't want to fall behind,
Sure.
because it's here and it's going to stay here. But I also do feel like there's a Trojan horse effect, because what stops AI from then offering degrees? What happens to our jobs, right? There is a Trojan horse feeling.
Has bad news. I mean, CSU's just said that they're going to, just came out today, that they are going to be the leader in AI education. And I would say this, I mean, to your point, jobs that are maybe changing, I wouldn't say eliminating necessarily, but the jobs that they are eliminating are jobs that are usually low income generating, and they're high time requirements and low production stuff. So stuff that those things have to pay for, businesses have to pay for, but they don't create a lot of money. They're tasks that have to be done, and it's a lot of repetitive tasks.
I understand that the job may be a specific type of job, but my concern is not necessarily the job, but the person behind the job.
I totally get that, but guess what the good news about people?
They'll figure it out.
They can change, right? I mean,
yeah, but didn't we? I mean, again,
the,
as somebody who's on the forefront of using AI, and I'm going to use it, we said the same thing about coal miners.
Yeah, we said
they would find a job, and a lot of them are out of work, and
they're not
families
coal
are
miners.
struggling.
They're, they would probably have to be a different job, right? I mean, here's the thing: like, we don't have a lot of people that are calligraphy specialists either.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, like, or like I had this talk with Renee Paredes, and I said, calligraphy is something that is it's not something we need. It's nice, but it's not something we need. We need coal, but we found ways to do it better. Now, let me tell you this: the person who knew that coal person, right, the coal miner, that understood the mountain, understood how coal was developed, and understood that, they become infinitely valuable, because now that machine doesn't know where to dig. It just knows how to dig. And so that coal miner still has to point to it and say, dig here, right? Now the person with the axe, right, that was digging into the mountain, they're not as valuable because we have a machine to dig in the mountain, right? My stance is there's other mountains now for that person to dig, because he's a laborer. He provides labor, right? There's going to be other labor. And I'm going to tell you, with data centers and everything else, they're still going to need labor, right? Until robots come and change the world, I guess. But,
that's what we're talking about.
Well, not necessarily. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, which artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. I mean, this is not something that is started 2 years ago. Artificial intelligence has been around since, early 60s, 70s. It's been around for a long, long time. So it's been an evolution of that, right? I'm not saying that jobs aren't going to, some jobs aren't going to be gone, right? But over the course of any industrial revolution, jobs are changing, and we lose jobs. But out of that coal mining, industry that's changed, so many millions of jobs have now been created outside of that, right? In the course of 30 years or 40 years. So I don't disagree with that. But this isn't a political thing, so we're going to move on to.
Sorry.
No, just saying. I'm just saying. Listen, you can't get. I mean, yes, we could talk about that in the future. But I think it's important to talk about. Maybe in a future episode, we'll definitely talk about the fears of that happening. Let me ask before we've got about 7 or 8 more minutes. But what about? I think one of the things for literacy, for you as students, which I feel like is really important, is Austin brings up this really good point. There's this range of faculty, right? Of, hey, you can't use it, to, yes, go for it. It's a tool. Just make sure you do it this way, right? I think that I don't think there's this side that's like, do whatever you want. I just don't think it's either they just don't know. But in general, it's like, hey, do it. But I'm going to give you some guidance. Where do you think you guys as students? I mean, you guys are taking multiple classes, not just taking my class, right? Where as students do you think faculty kind of live? Where do you think that? I mean, Austin gave out a good kind of range. Where do you think faculty are?
I think they're either aware and they have found some sort of way to integrate it into classes, or you're still doing paper book or writing in a notebook and you look at the slides and that's about all you do. And there's nothing really more than that. I have maybe had 1 or 2 classes where they're somewhere in between, but I feel like it's very common for them to be on opposite sides of the spectrum.
I feel like every single professor that I have knows about it. Every person that I've talked to ever knows about it. It just depends on if they know enough about it to want their students to use it or not let their students use it. And most of my classes that I've been in, they're like, sure, you can use it, but you have to know how to cite it. You have to prove to me that you're actually doing work with it. Or it's like, I don't trust it, so maybe we just shouldn't use it for this.
Well, let me bring up a vocabulary word that I think is going to be really important as we continue to move in the podcast, and that's called prompting. And I know, a prompt is really just what you're going to input into the AI to be able to get some kind of response or some kind of outcome. And I feel like this is a very important word as we move forward, even especially in education, because the prompt is you showing, in my opinion, it's you being able to show your work.
Yeah.
So the outcome that's going to be happening, and I just had this conversation. Let me bring this up, and you guys can all kind of share or tell me your thoughts. Education, the way we've had it, you turn in a paper, like most instructors say, hey, that you have an assignment, you turn in a paper, and that paper is how we assess you, right? We might even have a rubric saying that you need to do these things in order to be able to get the full credit for this assignment. And we look at your paper and we say, this is how we're going to assess you. And we assess what you didn't put in, right? We say, oh, you didn't have this, you didn't have that. That shows what you don't know, right? For me, I'm going to say you don't know that. Now, I don't know if you know that. I just know that you wrote about it and put it on paper and I get it and I can say, well, this is the rubric and it shows me that you didn't put those things in, right? But with AI, with a prompt, I can put the rubric in and I can say, hey, I want to have a paper that does this, and it will fully write the paper based on the rubric, and it will cover all of those things. So because of that, I, as an instructor, am not able to assess what you don't know, right? Because I get a paper that is completely correct. In fact, I had an instructor say, hey, I knew the student was using AI because the paper was too good. And I'm like, well, isn't that part of the point? I mean, so at the end of the day, so you have that. So how do we assess your knowledge when the paper part is now gone? Let's say we take it away. That is not something that we're going to be able to assess. It's still part of it, right? Because you want to be able to have the outcome. We want to be able to say, look, this is what we want you to create. Right? We want you to have this paper, this research paper, this whatever it is. So how then, as instructors, how can we assess students when that outcome is not going to be the way we assess your knowledge on things? Because I think that's where it's going. And for me, it's prompting. It's, whatever we're going to teach, it's what are you going to use? What words, what language are you using in your prompts to make sure that you have this thing that comes out that meets this rubric? And so when I look at prompts, I'm looking for that critical thinking piece and the vocabulary and all the things in there to make sure that you're getting this final piece, and not that you're copying the assignment, putting it in there and saying, give me what you got. So part of in the assignment is making sure that there are pieces that the AI has problems doing. Like what are your feelings about this, right? AI doesn't have feelings. So if you're asking about feelings, now it can say, I'm sad, but it's not sad. But you would have to say, hey, if it's saying, what are your feelings? First of all, let me stop there and say, do you feel like that makes sense?
It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe that's why educators are struggling with students using AI?
I feel like they still want to be able to grade the initial outcome, like the paper in general, and I think that your way of doing it it's immaculate, it's great, it's a very good way of adapting. I feel like in that, though, the outcome you get if you just copy the assignment in there, it's still all sometimes mumbo jumbo. And I feel like you're 100% right about prompting. You have to be able to expand and you basically have to have a whole rough draft to get the expansion that you want and to help you make it sound a little bit more advanced.
And you could really see the critical thinking if you are, and I think for me, when you're creating an assignment, and our assignments in Psych 6, they're multi-level.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we have one assignment that's multi-level, and through each one of those levels, I'm looking at those prompts and how they're developing. And that is the critical thinking piece, and that's those things. And then obviously in an in-class situation, we're adding the soft skills, like, Sadie and Sydney may be working together, and then they're discussing it. Hey, what is coming out? Why do I think this is good? Why do I think that we need to improve this? What does that look like? And then coming up with different prompts to be able to do that. What do you think, Mr. Instructor? I mean, does that sound like it's maybe not for you, but when you've talked to instructors, I mean, do you feel like they're holding on to the reason why they're having such a hard time is because they're holding on to the assessment model they've always had?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I mean, what's easy is what gets repeated. And so, the traditional paper. I think for my teaching method, I am not really interested in them regurgitating content to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially about something that I already know about. I don't want to read about it 50 times.
Yeah.
So I like them to make it personal because I want to read about how what we've learned about in class connects to their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I kind of evaluate if I'm going to use a paper. I try to avoid papers most of the time. But you said something about how in your class you're using soft skills. I think that as we move forward with AI use, soft skills are going to become more valuable than the actual writing itself.
Yeah.
I think the ability to connect with one another, to communicate with one another face to face is going to be more valuable than can you write me a paper articulating the information that's in the textbook, which AI won't really be able to do, right? You can't pull up AI on your phone and read from AI when you're talking to a person. And so those skills as an instructor, we're going to have to value them a little bit higher than we value a paper.
Yeah, I agree. What about, so you two, last kind of thing, we're wrapping up here. What advice would you give students who are listening going, I need to understand more about AI? Where would they start? Where would you tell them to get started? How would they start doing it? What are some do's and don'ts? Like really quickly, just what you guys would tell a student if they walked up to you and said, hey, you guys are using AI, how should I use it?
Start by teaching yourself
Well,
enough
first of all,
about it.
which would you tell them to do?
I would start with ChatGPT. I feel like it's the easiest to use. I feel like it's had a lot of growth in the last 2 years that I've started using it too. I would start by pulling that up and just asking it questions because it truly does record everything you ever put into it. And so if you want to get better at using it, you need it to have that history to pull from, and that helps make it honestly easier. I would just start by putting in random questions or like prompts about something you're learning, whether it's related to a textbook or an actual assignment. Just put that in, see what it gives you back, and like, oh, so that's what I'm doing wrong. And then change your prompt of what you put in. It's honestly, like you said, all about prompting. And once you figure out the best way to put information into it, you're going to get more information out of it.
I think NotebookLM is a great place to start, especially if a student is having like, oh, I don't really want to use AI, I'm kind of scared. You can throw your textbook in for that class. You can throw in some YouTube videos your teacher gave you talking about an assignment or a topic that you have, and it'll point you in the right direction for an assignment you don't understand. It'll give you that information, and you can read it up close and personal without having to be like, oh, shoot, where did I see that at?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great place to start for somebody who's skeptical about it. But if you're kind of comfy, ChatGPT is definitely the way to go.
Well, I mean, I think as we wrap up, I think AI is really, one of the things we could say, it's not going anywhere, right? I mean, there's too many billions of dollars in the companies are putting there. And our job as educators and maybe even students is not really to fight necessarily what it is, but to learn how to use it and to adopt. Jobs are going to be created with AI. There's going to be hundreds of millions of jobs being created with AI. And
We
as
hope.
our it's happening already. It's already happening. I think they're going to be different. They're definitely going to be different. And I think as with our at West, especially at Lemoore College, West Coast College District, I think our pursuit of excellence with our students, and success. We want our students to be successful. I think, this is a step. This podcast is really a step to have students be able to do that and hear, So in the next episode, we're going to dive deeper into some of the most popular AI tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude, and even NotebookLM. And so we're going to explore how those platforms work, how students are using them. So we might even have the Sadie and Sydney crew back on how they're using them successfully in college. And then, it's, if you found today's discussion, insightful, I just appreciate if you guys would subscribe to the AI literacy movement and join our conversation. I just want to thank our crew today, our guests. Austin, thanks for jumping in pretty much last minute, and thanks Sydney and thanks Sadie. You guys, anything else before we go? You guys want to give a shout out? No?
Shout out to Alan Fortune.
There you go, TikToks. You got your TikTok, your handle, TikTok handle?
Don't use social media.
They don't use social media. I know, he's poli-sci, the man's getting down. Anyway, thank you guys, appreciate you, and more AI, more often, use it better. Have a good day.